misafirlerimiz, konferansımız tüm hızıyla konuşmacılarımızın değerli sunumlarıyla devam ediyor. İşte günün en fazla merak edilen konuşmacısı. O dünyaca ünlü bir şehircilik otoritesinin başında. Şehirlere, hatta ülkelere danışmanlık yaptı. Kendisi akıllı şehirler konusunda dünyadaki en önemli isimlerden biri. Onu biliyorsunuz. Şu anda aramızda Bane. Please welcome. Alkışlarınızla. Welcome. Bir pointer alabilir miyiz?
Good morning. I apologize that I don't speak Turkish. It is a very difficult language to learn. I've spoken many languages in my life, but Turkish is not one of them. And I start with that because your first reaction to having me come up to this stage and speaking in English is that here's another ugly American who's going to tell us what to do. Because there's 2 points I want to make today. One is that what I'm talking about with smart cities is about Turkey for Turkey. It's not Germans, Americans, Chinese, or English coming and telling you how to build your cities. Only you can do that. The second thing I want to talk about is that when you walked up the elevator today, you saw down on the first floor all the big construction, tunnels, roads, all these kinds of things. And then when you come up to the second floor, you see ICT. I've explained to the conference organizer, this needs to be corrected. They both need to be on the same floor. Because smart cities ultimately is about ICT and tunnel boring and bridges and roads and waste plants and water plants. So there's one thing for those of you that are municipal presidents and mayors, when you go back to your city, the next time your transportation office comes in and says, we need to spend several million lira on a new road, the first question you should ask them is, does it include any ICT? Because most of the time, what they're going to say is no. It's about macadam or asphalt. They're going to make another bridge. They're going to make the street wider. They're going to add another street. They're not going to talk about managing traffic through data analytics and ICT. So I have a lot of slides, and they'll be available for anybody who wants them. But I was walking on the floor here, and you'll see that I have slides about Dubai and Boston and Barcelona. But we should also talk about Ankara, okay? You have a smart city right here, okay? And you should pay attention to that. So they promised me, because this is in Turkish, that they will send me pictures and they will translate this for me about the citizen engagements apps that they have, the software that they have, because I'm going to be in Prague next week, and then I'll be in Delhi, and then I'll be in Sydney, and I want to show them that here in Turkey there are also smart cities. And I think this is very important for you to understand because, as I said, my 2 messages are, one, that this is about Turkey for Turkey by Turkish people. Secondly, it's about combining ICT and heavy construction, absolutely essential. The third thing that you need to understand, and we'll talk about this as we go through my slides, is that it's also about export. So as you make Ankara or Istanbul or Izmir or Ankara a smart city, you are also building export enterprises. You have very strong companies in this country, and if you can build smart cities here, you can build them anywhere. So that's something that I want you to remember, that every time you include ICT in a road or a building or an energy plant, and you do it with Turkish technology and Turkish personnel and Turkish services, you're actually learning to do it elsewhere. And you're going to be able to create a strong export potential. So the world is changing. You're looking at the largest demographic change to ever occur, and that is increasing number of people in cities. Cities are transforming. We all come to cities to get married, to get a job, to go to university, and often we stay in those cities, and these cities are changing radically. Now, there are two big trends, and we've all talked about the trend about population. The other trend is about growing digitization and the use of ICT, which we've talked about earlier, and the gentleman from Turkish Telecom, who I had a very good discussion with, has given you a lot of detail about how that happens. And this goes to my point about you don't have to look outside of Turkey to find good partners. Turk Telecom is very knowledgeable, and key to a smart city is strong telecommunications. It's a huge market financially, and you have a commercially based system just like Germany or the United States or the UK does. So it's important that you have a long path of financial sustainability and growth. And smart cities is that path. The benefits are tremendous to individual cities. Education and healthcare. Barcelona alone has created close to $4 billion in value over the last 3 or 4 years. And we have all of this. I want to talk about smart lights a little bit down at the bottom. You'll see that. I'll talk about that in a second. But again, nobody talked about the export potential. So I had a visit from the Spanish Economic Trade Ministry the other day. Because of the smart cities development in Spain, there's been a lot of new Spanish companies that are offering services throughout the world. The largest smart cities market in the world is China. The second largest is North America, and the third is Europe. So for a lot of smaller countries, it's important to find where the export potential is. Now, I talked about streetlights. So I told you that when you go back to your city, I suggested that the first question out of your mouth was that if there was any project, that it include ICT. The second thing you should ask about is, what are we doing with our streetlights? Are we making our streetlights smarter? And by that, I mean not just switching out the light bulb, LED, but also adding sensors, adding warning, adding alarm bells, adding CCTV cameras. Every city in the world almost has streetlights. It's the first place that you should start. Now, I'm going to talk about this being a race. And I don't want you to take this in a bad way, because we see smart journeys, smart cities as a journey. It's not a destination. It's not someplace that all of a sudden you say, hey, we're here, we won. It's a long-distance race. But it is a race. It's a race for the connected lifestyle. It's a race to take care of the disadvantaged. Turkey has a strong tradition of taking care of its widows, its orphans, its poor, as in many other countries. And it's very important that we see smart cities as taking care of the disadvantaged. It's also a race for environmental improvements. And I've said this several times, it's a race for economic development. So what does that race mean? That race means that if I'm sitting in Istanbul, my competitors are possibly Rome, Paris, London, New York. If I'm sitting in Ankara, while it is the capital of the country, I still am looking for the smartest people. I'm looking for investment. I'm looking for young people to come and go to university here. So I'm competing against other similarly sized cities in Turkey and in the region. And that's what we mean by it being a race. In the end, the minister said it, are you prepared for the future? And this is about being prepared for the future. So there are 3 parts to a smart city: collecting data, communicating that, analyzing it, sorry. So it's a Fitbit for the city. It tells you what's going on in the city on a constant basis. The streets tell us if they're congested. This was my point about when you go back to your city, you ask them if the big road project they have has ICT in it. Because if it doesn't, then that street cannot tell you its maintenance cycle, it can't tell you if it's congested, it can't tell you when it needs to be repaired. And it should be able to. Another thing is buildings tell us their conditions. Most people don't think of a street light or a bus or any of this as having sensors, but all of this communicates for a citywide network. And this is something that you should look at in terms of developing your city. So when we talk about the applications for data, there are three types of applications: situational awareness, real-time optimization, and predictive analytics. For situational awareness, I'm going to point you to Rio de Janeiro and the IBM Center there. Now, most people think that they got this situational control center because they had the Olympics coming. But the real reason they got it was because in Rio de Janeiro, they have a real problem with mudslides. In the slums, what they call the favelas, they have mudslides, and people die. And the important thing for a mayor or a municipal president is to get resources to the people that are hurting very quickly. So you understand this from a public safety perspective, but you should also understand it from an environmental perspective. You have earthquakes, mudslides, you have torrential rain, you have a lot of different types of issues that require that you need to and get resources to people quickly. Another thing is optimization. So in a country like China, which is huge, they don't have doctors in every city and every village. So what they do is they optimize by allowing medical services to be delivered by video conferencing. So this is something, obviously, that could be done here in Turkey, just like it's being done in China. And you'll see that most of my slides will mention a company because we think it's very important that the mayors and the leaders of cities understand that everybody has to be involved. So Huawei is one of our partners in our global effort to educate cities. Another one of our partners is Itron, and we talk about data analytics for water leakage. Now, I'm going to talk later about one person who's not in this room that's very important, but I'll save that for the moment. Another company that we do a lot of work with is Microsoft. And of course, it's about here using prediction. Predicting how people are going to be educated. Predicting where they're going to show up at a given time. Predicting where the traffic is tomorrow, the next day, in the middle of a rainstorm. Another aspect is automating. So Oracle did a very good job in Abu Dhabi, just as Dow has done throughout the world. Now, you'll notice that Dow is one of the sponsors here, and most people don't think of Dow as a part of the Smart City framework. But what's really important about understanding Dow is that they build the materials, the smart materials for the roads and the buildings. So it's very important to understand that it's not just about ICT. In the end, this is about people. It's not about the technology. And it's about different types of technology when you do consider technology. So there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And this is the message that sometimes is hard to give because people don't want to think about going back to a city where maybe it's not doing as well. And that's why we describe this as a journey. It's not an absolute destination. There is always hope. There are cities that are pulling ahead: Dubai, Singapore, New York. This is also about being happier for less. It's about providing different types of services for citizens. Now, I have this great shot of Dubai, but I suggest that everybody go to the Ankara City desk over here, and they have a lot of these booklets about how they provide services to citizens. And this is just as important as anything that Dubai is doing, and Ankara should be as any Turkish city should be applauded for making these efforts. But I do want to show you this. In Boston, they've put together a score. Now, I spend a lot of time with mayors in the United States, in India, Australia, and I've talked to mayors and they will say, don't tell me what my citizens are thinking. I got elected here. I know who voted for me. I know who didn't vote for me. I know where the people are angry. I know what they're upset about. And I don't pretend to do that. I think that is for the mayor and the city leadership to decide. But one of the things that a mayor, municipal president, or city leadership can do is improve communication with its citizens. And that's always a key piece to getting reelected and providing services. So citizens are increasingly expecting a fully digital city. By using their cell phone, they're fully expecting the ability to communicate with their city. There's nothing, if you want to prepare for the future, as the minister said, you have to make your city a smart city. Nothing else makes sense. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the council. The Smart Cities Council is a trade association made up of the largest ICT companies in the world. We have regional councils in Australia, India, Europe, and North America. And my goal with this visit is that next year, when this conference comes around, there'll be a Smart Cities Council Turkey. It'll be led by Turkish citizens with Turkish companies helping build Turkish smart cities. We have free resources. We probably have the world's most visited website when it comes to smart city material. All of it is free. We have a readiness guide which tells you how to build a smart city. My goal in a couple of years would be not only to have a readiness guide for Turkey, but also have it in Turkish. Dr. Aisha bin Bishr, who is the head of Smart City Dubai, will tell you that they built their smart city based on this book. And I highly suggest you take a look at it. It's available on our website for free. We also have what we call a Compassionate Cities program. Remember, I talked about that this is a race to help the disadvantaged. So there's one question that I asked you to ask, which was, did the road project include ICT? The next question I want you to ask are, the ICT that we're paying for, do they extend benefits to everybody in the city? This is really important. I think you will find that you already have the data, you already have the telecommunications capability. The question is, how do you use the technology? You can use the technology to predict who is going to be homeless, who is going to need assistance to get to the doctor. All of this is possible. And the technology is already there. You don't need new technology to do this. Another thing we do are what we call readiness workshops. And I want to talk about this for a second because there are many municipal presidents and people from different cities in Turkey here. So right now we're in negotiation with a country in Eastern Europe. The ambassador came to see me in Washington and he said, we want to make our cities a smart city, and we want to take our technology and we want to sell it in the United States, in the UK, and Germany. And people tell us that we have to spend millions of dollars to do that, but we have to spend the money in the United States. You know, we have to meet people, go to cities, and everything else. And I said, no. You take that $1 million and you spend it in your country, and you build your cities, and you build your companies, and I will help you do it. So now we're planning to have a readiness workshop in his country where we bring together all the stakeholders, all the companies, and we sit down and we talk about what it takes to make a smart city in that country. Then, when they start building their smart cities, they can start exporting the technology. So anybody tells you that you have to spend the money outside of Turkey to get some kind of, insight into being a smart city, they're wrong. You spend your money here. You have everything it takes to make smart cities here in Turkey. So just quickly, I'm going to go over a couple of steps that are really important to this journey of becoming a smart city. There's sort of 4 steps. And today, you have many people in the room who will go back to their cities and they're champions. They are the leaders in those cities. And you have to have somebody who is willing to raise the flag and say, we need to be a smart city. You have to include everybody in the city. You have to include the 7 stakeholder groups, which I'll talk about in a second. You also have to consider other cities. Now, this is the first thing that sort of most mayors don't like. They say, you mean I have to talk to the mayor, 100 kilometers down the road? And I say, yes. He sends you water. He sends you electricity. He sends you people, especially if you're a big city. You have to talk to everybody about becoming a smart city. The second thing you have to do is create a vision. And this is really a long-term vision about your strategy. The third thing you have to do is create your plan. And this is about what your priorities are. Now, with all due respect to ICT companies, they will come in and tell you that your first priority is a data platform or telecommunications or something like that. You have to say, no, I'm the mayor, I'm the municipal president, and this is my priority. Now go solve that problem. That problem may be traffic. It may be poverty. It may be you don't have enough good food distribution. So you have to decide what's important, and then you have to ask industry to solve that problem. And last but not least, you have to implement your plan. Now, there was some talk earlier about pilots. I think pilots, I'm not a big fan of them. I think that if you use agile technology development methodology, you can roll out your technology very quickly. So I argue against pilots. It just doesn't make much sense. So there are 7 stakeholders that you have to pay attention to when you're building your smart city. And as you'll notice again, I put the disadvantaged down at the bottom. There's one key stakeholder that's not in the room, and that is your utility, okay? You cannot have a smart city if you are not partnering with your electric, your water, and waste utility. This is really essential. In many cities throughout the world, the utilities will own the infrastructure. They'll own the streetlights. In other places, the infrastructure. But if you don't have the utilities in the room, you're not going to be able to create a successful smart city. So just as I said, everything on the first floor should be combined with everything on the second floor, the third thing that should happen to make a successful conference is that every utility in Turkey should be on that floor, and they should be explaining how they contribute to a smart city. That is really important for the long run. Also, study great examples. There are plenty of examples of what other cities have done. If you look at our material about the readiness guide globally, or the readiness guide for India, the readiness guide for Australia, those are all local stories. And eventually someday, as I said, we should have a readiness guide for Turkey. So what are the successful stories in Turkey? And how can other cities duplicate them? So if you're a city official or citizen, please look at our material. I apologize that it's in English again, but I still think it's very important to the long journey to a smart city. The second thing is, if you're an academic or a researcher or an NGO, we're always looking for advisors. We have over 200 advisors around the world. If you're a solution provider, please consider joining the council. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and say again, my 3 messages were, this is about Turkey, built by Turkish citizens themselves using Turkish companies. Secondly, when you go back to your city, the first question you should ask is ICT part of the project? That's really key. The third thing you should say is, where's the utility? Where is our electric utility, our water or waste utility? Because all of them are important for you to win this race. So it's a race. And are you ready? And as the minister said, are you prepared for the future? Thank you for your time.